Listeners of the T.R.O.N podcast, this is your host, Rashad Woods. Today I have a very special guest today. I've had the honor of talking to some amazing people, but this man's accomplishments speak for themselves. I have Shaun Bemis, military veteran, entrepreneur, all-around good guy, father, and I'm really honored for your time on this show, and thank you for your service, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Rashad. Excited to be here and just chat a little bit.
First of all, what compelled you to get into the military? You're about the same age as me, so I'd love to hear how you served our country. And, that's a big honor and service and a very selfless act of yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks. So I was, what I kind of refer to as a September 12th guy. So September 11th happens. I was going to school, a little bit lost. And, it happened. I was like, hey, I'm going to go get in the fight. Like, I want to do something here and not just sit around. And so I immediately started talking to recruiters, signed up. And then a few months later, I was off to boot camp.
It's crazy because, again, I vividly remember that horrible day. I was in college at the time, and, people like yourself, here I am, in a dorm room. I'm talking to a classmate I graduated with. I graduated in 2001, and, next, he's in Baghdad, 2 years later, whatever. I'm missing the dates, but it was within 18 months, 22 months of that time. And, here I am, like, worried about going to class and, doing the everyday thing on a campus. And the same guy that I graduated with is there. And it's just like worlds apart in experience, man. It takes a lot, especially at that age when you're trying to find, life, and then somebody's willing to go that early and decide that that's what they want to do. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's amazing. So you're in the military, and then, what started your entrepreneurial journey from there?
Yeah. So, I did a full 20 years. I was an Intel guy. And as I go through transition, I was lucky enough, right? Even when I first joined the military, maybe even halfway through my career, it was just kind of like when you went to get out, it was like, all right, good luck, right? Appreciate your service. We're done with you. We're on to the next.
Yeah.
And the government, nonprofits, they've done a lot to really help transitioning servicemen.
Yeah.
And so I was really fortunate. I got into some really good groups. I retired out of Naval Special Warfare. I was an Intel guy working with SEAL teams. So I had some advantages there that I could pull on as well. And I actually made a run at working in sports. I had coached youth soccer. I was director of coaching for a club while I was still serving. And I was like, hey, and I found some guys that had transitioned into pro sports. Let me explore this. So I started, instead of taking a traditional route though, I started pitching a chief of staff concept to pro sports teams.
Wow.
And so newer concept, it is coming online in sports, but I interviewed with one NHL team where I got through both the assistant GMs. It was a brand new concept. This is how it's going to look. I basically drafted the job description. And then it gets to the GM. He's the second oldest guy in the league. And he's like, man, I've been doing this for 50 years. Like, why do I need that dude?
You're right.
And to his point, he probably wasn't wrong.
But you're ahead of the curve because now every team kind of has that person now, right? Yeah.
And so, but what was really cool, what I really enjoyed about that, it wasn't here's a job posting, I'm just going to apply and try to get in.
Right.
I was pitching myself. I was pitching the position, the value added, the time saved for those executives, all of those things, and realized that's what I really enjoyed, right? When I went from traditional Navy into working with the SEAL teams, it was very similar, right? Traditional Navy, everything's structured. It's very much what you would think of typical military, right? Like, yes, sir, no, ma'am, all these things. When you start working with SEAL teams, Green Berets, they're like, is it legal, moral, ethical? Like, all right, let me know when it's done, right? And it was more just go do things and less ask for permission. And I thrived in that environment. And so I looked at that experience of trying to break into sports, and I was like, hey, startups, this is my place.
That's your lane, right?
It's fast paced, it's loose, it's, everyone has that end goal. And as long as you are moving towards it and you're not spending a bunch of money doing it, right? Like that founder is going to be like, yeah, man, go, like, figure it out.
You're all there with the same people who are same driven and passionate like yourself, the guys and women who would be getting up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, right? Do the late nights. And then basically, I don't want to say burn the candle on both ends, but you're not dealing with somebody you have to kind of, yank out of bed, so to speak. You know what I mean? And, hey, Johnny,
Absolutely.
You don't have that. That doesn't happen around the group of people that you are being around. Watch some of your videos and, your relentless running and everything like that. And I say this very respectfully. I can't imagine, like, from your military experience that you're not used to, drive, low sleep, and being on point when it comes to what you're doing. Is that an accurate description?
No, for sure. I mean, even when I worked within the teams, like I was kind of known as that guy that was just going to grind, right? Like I wasn't the best analyst, I wasn't the smartest guy, I wasn't the brightest, but you better believe I was going to sit there and I was going to find the enemy and give guys a target, and I was going to keep people safe, and I was just going to put in the work.
Absolutely.
And the startup community is very similar. A lot of times it's lower paid, right? It's that grind of
it's
like
the suck.
It is. And you have to enjoy it. And even with my you watch some of the videos, even with the running, right? Like I'm not a guy who wants to go run some crazy fast 5K time. Like I run ultra marathons. Like, and it's funny, I've run some 5Ks, and my wife is like, don't you like that better? And I'm like, it hurts. It hurts so bad. It's terrible. And she's like, but you run all day. And I'm like, that's a different hurt. Like, I don't
right.
And have that acute, just like, and I feel like the startup life is like that, where it's just that, like, you sit in that grind and just find your rhythm.
Well, I can't remember the name of the founder of LinkedIn, but basically there was, I'm paraphrasing when he said, like, if you're in the startup business, there is no sleep, right? There's no, the payoff to it obviously is very lucrative, when it gets to that pinnacle, but like you're either all in or you're not, right? Like, you know how you can kind of decompress if you're employed, for instance, you have that time off where there's that given window. Okay, I got off at 5 or whatever time that is, and you can decompress. If you're trying to get something off the ground, and you're trying to get business partners, and you're trying to grow things, like you have to be all in. You know what I'm saying? Like that, maybe you can get that sleep, maybe you can have that night off, to have dinner. I can't, speak from that perspective, but even like to a degree with this podcast, the only reason I can talk to people like yourself is that basically, like, I got to put in the work necessary to get people like yourself to dedicate their time to me. So even though I'm not building a product for, say, tinkering in my garage, I can't rest on my laurels. I still have to be interesting. I have to do my homework. I have to be prepared, right? I don't get to have a day off a bad interview, right? You just don't, like, right? So, not everything's going to knock out the ballpark, so to speak. But to your point, you're either on point or you're not.
Yeah, for sure.
That's it.
Yeah, and I think another thing that's really cool about that startup community is it's in the open, right? Like, unless you're working at something that is stealth, like you've got smaller teams.
Yeah.
So when you make a mistake,
right?
Like, I'll tell you, like, when because my first exposure was working with a startup scale up. It was a Danish company.
Yeah.
It was my first job out of the military. I was the only American.
That's amazing.
It was an incredible experience, right? Like perfect for me. And I go in and I see their lead generation process, and I'm like, kind of scratch my head, and I'm like, man, you guys aren't bleeding money doing it. Like, I was like, so I talked to my counterpart in Copenhagen. I'm like, can you just give me 2 days to play with this thing? And I play with it, bring in some optimization, some automation stuff, work with our developers a little bit. I'm like, hey, can you write me this code? Like, this is the end result. This is what I need. And so I put together a nice process. I'm like, perfect. And, founders like, love it. Let's implement it. We implement it. And I start, scraping things from the internet and doing this stuff. I got people finding me email addresses. I send out my first mass emails, and I emailed the founder of our competitor.
Oh,
and it was and I'm looking at the boss, and I'm like, hey boss, so this just happened. The process isn't perfect, but it's all out there, right? And I love it, right? Like, we were moving fast, we're breaking things, we're fixing things. Like,
if you're making the competitor of Coca-Cola, you really think the guy that sells Coca-Cola didn't know that somebody down the street was like making, like, come on, man, like, you're using the same suppliers, you're acquisitioning the same talent, right? Like, anything that's successful is duplicated, right? Like, let's call a spade, right? So
100%.
Like, you know what I mean? So at some point you have to just be like, that didn't stop Facebook because MySpace was there, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? Exactly. Straight up truth. You know what I mean? So what I find fascinating, what you said about yourself earlier, right, was like, when you said you're not the most talented guy. Like, I have a black belt in karate, right? Tong Sudo. Oh, nice. I have a brown belt in Taekwondo, and I've done Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and a couple of different other styles. And you are the worst kind of guy to, like, go against when it comes to, like, sparring, right? Because, like, it is. Like, I'm serious, man. Because, like, I'm not saying you wouldn't be talented. I don't want to diss whatever your skill set is. But those guys that literally grind you into the ground because they just, like, have the motor is the absolute worst guy to spar. Because you're just like, dude, can you please, like, you're killing me here, right? Because they have that gear, and then you're wondering when that gear is going to turn itself off. And then it doesn't. And then you're like, damn, this dude is really pissing me off. So
It's funny enough you say that because, like I said, I was a soccer player growing up, and for conditioning during the winter, I used to go train with the wrestling team.
oh my
And I
gosh.
talked to the coach, and I was like, "Look, I don't want to learn. Don't coach me. Just like I'm just gonna lay flat on the mat and let
Yeah,
your boys like work on their
100%.
moves, and I'm
Yeah,
just gonna be a pain." And they didn't coach me at all, and I just got the blood beat out of me. But it was great condition, right? And I go back to
unbelievable.
spring ball, and I
Yeah.
was in way better shape than everybody else because I
Oh, dude.
conditioned with the wrestling team, growing up.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
when you came to your military experience, anybody who thinks they're in shape, I mean, listen, man, I mean, you may be good enough, to make it to the coffee break room on time or go up that flight of steps. So, I say this very respectfully. Like, I got a printout of a Navy SEAL workout once. I didn't even do the swimming because I didn't have access to a pool at the time.
yeah,
And I damn near almost, I mean, it was like I did it once. And I was like, obviously, I didn't come anywhere close to the times, respectively. But I just wanted to do what they did, right? Like,
sure,
learning how like chin ups and pull ups, man. Like you talking about a humbling experience right there,
yeah. No, those guys were beat. I mean, try being like the Intel nerd, working with those guys daily, right? And like we would do these runs where they bust us to a state park,
man.
and it's for whatever reason, even like we're in a bus, right?
Yeah,
Even like the cool kids would sit in the back, like we're all
yeah,
adults, right? But all the cool young SEALs are sitting in the back. But that bus would park, and you'd see these dudes like flying off the butt, like, dude,
unbelievable.
relax, like. And they were just by the time I got off the bus, you couldn't even see them anymore.
That's
They were just
unbelievable.
like
That's
they were just uber competitive. Like it
different.
didn't matter what it was.
Yeah,
Did not
just
matter what they
different.
were doing.
Yeah, you're talking about the Michael Jordan of in
Yeah,
shape, right? Like you're talking about like that they're just at a different level of anything. You can't be in that realm in that space because you wouldn't understand it from the outside looking in, so to
yeah.
speak.
No, even the old broken ones would work us all into the ground, right? Like I mean,
Woo!
they're another level.
Nothing but respect for you guys, man. That's amazing. When you either approach on the inside or the outside, how was it starting to be received? Did your military experience give you kind of one? I don't say a leg up, but did it say like I'm used to processes and efficiencies in a manner that you may not see or your team may not see, and maybe there was a better quote unquote in for you than somebody who I have an MBA and I did course case studies and I know exactly how to study this bad boy to the to,
Sure. It, so funny enough, when I first retired, I felt like it gave me a leg up. It
yeah.
really opened doors. I had a lot of conversations. I
Mhm.
wouldn't say I had a ton of opportunity, but like, I mean, it definitely, I mean, how many people can just basically network their way into pro sports teams and start
Absolutely,
pitching,
for
right?
sure.
Assistant GMs and chief
It's
soccer
tough.
officers and stuff like that, right?
Right.
So 100% it opens some doors.
Yeah,
The
good.
further away I get, I've actually found that like when I because over the last like year I kind of looked at corporate America. I was like, should I not?
Yeah.
Started applying, and it was like, no, you don't have any industry experience. You don't have that. You don't,
Right,
and it was
right, right.
almost discounted because they were like, well, you don't have experience, and it's
It's
like
weird how that works though, man.
it was crazy, right? Like I literally could go in and like look at an Intel problem set in
Yeah,
places people hadn't been before and
right.
build out an entire network and figure out how
Wonderful.
we're going to get places,
Yeah,
position equipment,
yeah,
people working with the budget, right? All these
for sure.
legal authorities as well, all
So
these
you
things.
can navigate with I hate to cut you off. You can navigate between digital, analyst, and legal. So like in your back, so like you had all that experience to be able to say, I can talk to the CTO, I could talk to the chief legal team, I could talk to the engineering squad. Do you find any particular department less receptive to what you offer, right? Because traditionally the engineers are the least social kind of people.
I mean, I would say people that have the technical backgrounds,
Okay.
those are the places where it's like, you just don't get this. And it's like,
Right.
it's like, right, like I can't go in and set up a network, but I
Hmm.
fundamentally understand how it works, right? Like I
Right.
like to say, like when it comes to analytics, I can't write the algorithm,
Right.
but I 100% understand what you're doing with it. I
For sure.
understand the good info,
Yeah.
good output and all of those things. I know what we need to adjust, but
Absolutely.
I can't go in and rewrite the code to
Right.
adjust it. But I can tell you that,
Yeah.
hey, the output I'm getting is not what I need, and this is what's missing. But
Wonderful.
those people tend to, and I shouldn't say it, the technical folks tend to dismiss it without that background, which to a point I get, right? Like, I mean, again, if you're going to come in and start talking to me about intelligence and how that
Right.
works, right? Like, I'm going to kind of be like, okay, hang on, right?
For
Like,
sure.
hang
For
on,
sure. That's when they tell
so
you they watch Jack Ryan and they know what they're talking about, right?
exactly, right? Like, yeah, I just got done watching the new Terminal List, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, well, that's not right. That's not right. But it's
Hey,
great. But
It's dude. I just watched season 2, man. Like, so I watched the first season. I don't want to derail the conversation because
no, yeah.
you deserve better than talking about Amazon TV shows. But
I
like,
mean, we could do a second podcast talking about this.
yeah. But like,
we'll launch it.
I had no clue the second season. Like, I was really like looking forward to it, but it kind of, and all of a sudden I'm on Prime and I'm like, because I love the first season, and for entertainment purposes, obviously you can speak much better than I can on that. I enjoyed
it was great.
Yeah.
No, it was great. But I do sit there and I'm like, like they call the guy Chief throughout it. And I'm like, no one in the teams calls that dude Chief. It's his first name. Like, what are they doing? Like, so there's little things. And I'm like, come on, whoever's their military advisor on this one.
Oh, my God.
To a point, I get it, right?
But for sure. But hey, maybe the military advisor was like, I tried to give my recommendation. They insist on putting that in the script, and I just let bygones be bygones. So here you are telling, with these companies, giving your expertise, and obviously you have to either show a certain sales metrics that you can meet, cost savings initiative, different markets they haven't met. So how did you find out, like, where was that space where, because I saw, your profile where you did increase sales amongst companies and you navigate that really well. So this is kind of a two-legged stool question. Number one, do you have a team that you work with that does this, or just you? And then number two, how did you begin to start measuring and tracking real progress?
Yeah. So right now it's just me. That being said, like, I feel like one of my strengths is having a good network. And so there's certainly times when, whether I'm directly, going out just on the side and being like, hey, bro, can you help me with it? Like, I can't do this, right? Like, you're the guy. Or if I'm literally saying like, hey, you need to bring this guy in as well. Please have a chat with him or her. And like, they're the expert in this, whatever the case is. I think that's one of my strengths, is not saying, oh, I got it. And then, and then messing something up, right? Like, if I don't know, I don't know. And that's okay. But I'm going to make sure, I do right by the client and I get the right person in. Some of the biggest places I see is like, just time saved. I think there's a ton of inefficiency. I'm not going to say the military is the best at it, because like, if you're supposed to be someplace at 6 a.m., that means people are showing up at 5 a.m. and you're literally just chilling. I mean, the first time I went to a meeting as a civilian, I walked in like 15 minutes early and like,
nobody's there.
And I sat there by myself for 15 minutes, right? And people came in and they're like, where'd you go? And I'm like, I've been here. And they're like, why? And I'm like, because you show up to meetings 15 minutes early. What do you mean, why? So, as far as like, the actual process building of things, like, that's where I really think the military does a good job. That's where I think I've been able to bring those over. And, it saves a lot of time, inefficiencies. You get rid of those. And then just finding, like, I think there's a lot of benefit in bringing in somebody that isn't an expert in what you're doing. And I've worked in a ton of different industries, right? Like, I worked with a guy, he was a mortgage broker. And I get in and I'm like, hey, what's your biggest pain point? And he's like, it's just bringing new clients in, closing the deal. I'm like, walk me through your process. And he tells me how he's like sending these like 20-page applications. And he's like, print these out, they hand fill them out, scan them back in, send them in. His assistant then hand jams them in. And I'm like, I'm telling you right now, man, if you send me a 20-page application, first of all, if you just send me a 20-page application, I'm probably not doing it. But then if you tell me to print it and then scan, I'm like, come on. And I have a printer and I'm not going to do that. So
no way.
And so I literally just created a type form.
Yeah.
Right. That was it. Like a survey monkey.
He couldn't see that because it was only him. Right. So correct. Like,
he's only him, a little bit older. Right. Yeah. And I think that's another thing, as technology, right? Like, we're in this crazy advancement of AI and all kinds of things. Right. And if you haven't kept up, like, it's terrifying.
Of course,
I get it. Like, you don't want to dip your toe in now because it's so far from where it was even a year ago that you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. When like I said, like, literally a survey monkey, like a type form can be a lifesaver to an organization, but they're scared to make that incremental step. And there's a ton of good that comes with that. But that just comes from working from different industries, working with different people. I've worked in SaaS and tech, worked with, like I said, mortgage broker, blue collar folks, like, it runs the gamut.
Well, the thing is about it, regardless of the industry that you navigate, the number one thing you don't want to do is bog yourself down with paperwork and cumbersome tasks, right? So whether you're working a plumbing service, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a software service company, whatever, because at the end of the day, people can say, I'm in the service business. Everything is the service business.
Yeah.
Every single thing is a service business, from the airlines to government, military contracting. You're providing a service. And the one thing people hate is cumbersome paperwork, redundancies, and inefficiencies. And when you talk about technology, like I reference movies all the time. You probably haven't even seen this movie. But there's a movie that came out like 2003 or 4. It's called The Cooler. right? And so it was like William H. Macy was like the guy, like if a guy was on a hot streak at the casino, he like was the bad luck charm, right? And
Yeah.
so like, and then Alec Baldwin played the CEO of the casino, and it was an old school casino. But then they bring in these Harvard guys that are like, you need to be more transitioned to new school, and
Yeah.
it was like the clash of, oh, we want to keep this traditional and not be the Shangri-La. We want to be old
Right.
school. And so when you talked about that, it's when the advent of technology is in our face, whether we like it or not. And ask people 20 years ago, they were using the yellow pages. I mean, that's not happening, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They just do not have the time.
I just worked with some shippers, some import export guys that were literally taking orders in triplicate. Like, you know, the old school like triplicate, you rip it off and like, and I mean, these guys are like, you know,
That's
a $50 million company. Like they're killing it. Like they're doing for what they are. They're a family office.
yeah,
They're killing it.
yeah.
And it's like, guys, like
You gotta stop.
so much more.
Right,
If you just modernize just a little, like you
right.
don't need an AI chatbot taking
No,
your orders.
yeah.
But you do need a form online to take orders.
Get a cloud Oracle system, guys, and let's make them.
Exactly.
I mean, you're the guy that's going to transition them to that, teach their team, implement it, and here's your options. And what's crazy is that, and you and I are close to the same age, may even be the same age, right? Is that you know that things transition from record to CD to you know, a skip tape player to MP3, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Some of these companies, because they've been successful, they may be grandfathered in. They live in their ice, and I'm not dissing them. They have their own pocket of where they've done business.
Yeah.
They have a landline, a fax machine, like you said, the cabinet with a million different, you know, things like this.
The secretary has been there for literally 50 years. Like they just gave her a watch. She's still not retired. Like, yeah, you know.
And it's more common than people think that it is, right? Like
it is. Yeah.
Where I live at, you know, there were restaurants up until 5 or 6 years ago that still were cash only, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And you're just like, that's understandable. You don't want to pay the merchant fees, and I get that. That's not my business. But there are studies that show that you're missing out on a large percentage of sales by not implementing that. And then next thing you know, you come at 2 years later, they're like, yeah, they take debit cards and credit cards now, right? Yeah. So it's crazy that finally people had to get on board.
Yeah, and like you said, like super successful companies, and there's an interesting trend. I'm sure you've seen it, where it's like you've got a lot of these boomers that have these service industry companies that have been crazy successful, that they're still doing the same things they did in 1972, right? And they're ready to retire. Their kids don't want to do it because it's the service industry. They're like, oh, like I'm going to sell paint. Like, what do you mean?
Right.
I'm a tech bro. Like I'm on the, you know, I'm on Wall Street.
I went to Penn State, dude. I don't want to take over my dad's plumbing business.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And so there's a huge opportunity to go in and for others to acquire these companies.
Right.
What those guys need, to be quite like, not to toot my own horn, but they need guys like me to come in.
Absolutely. 100%.
And just optimize things just a little. Yeah. And they're going to 2, 3, 4x their exit, because those people that are coming in to acquire them aren't doing that mental calculation of, well, now I have to update everything. I have to modernize it. Like, it literally takes me coming in for 30, 60, 90 days, and they're going to 2, 3x their exit. You know,
let's also call it for what it is, right? If you went to a 4-year school, you got an MBA, or you went to something high level, even if it wasn't that, your vision, there's been a very big imbalance where your parents' restaurant versus you sitting in an office suite. It looks prettier for you to have that window seat psychologically, because, you know, you got that Gordon Gekko thought in your mind, as opposed to serving people, you know, pizza on a Friday night. Even if serving pizza on people on a Friday night would be more lucrative and more, you know, advantageous, because to your point, you know, they're like, dude, I went to school for, you know, to be a software engineer, or I have an MBA. I'm not going to be doing this. Right. So there's a perception, or maybe they spent their whole life around it as a kid, and they generally like, I don't want nothing to do with that no more. Yeah. You know,
well, and I think sometimes the parents pushed it, right? Is like, you know, dad owns a landscaping company, and he's like, man, I'm breaking my back. I want better for my kids. You're going to go to school.
Exactly.
And now he's turning around. He's like, who's going to take my company? Because I told my kid to go be a software engineer, and like, I didn't want this for him, but it's a great business.
Absolutely.
Lawns aren't going away. Right? But that programming language you learned is gone, right? Like we're on to, like, now you don't even need programming language, but I still have a lawn Like it's
Right.
still there and it still needs to be maintained.
And then the dad could be still going door to door, and he's like, "Dad, no, get this app, and then get your appointment
Yes.
scheduled, right? Because now you have, or have a weather forecast tracker, so that way, or
Yeah.
when to buy."
Optimizing your scheduling and
Right, right, and then your customers will love it because they're like, I mean, dude, if you played soccer, you said you mentioned I don't want to put your personal life
yeah.
out there, but you said you have activities outside of here. I have kids, and trying to track all their activities, manually ain't happening. You better have a calendar. They got Team Snap, they got all this other crap going on, and then they're like, "Did you get this parent?" I'm like, dude, I guess, like, I don't know. The coaches text message you, and then you get a message through it. So to your point, if you have that landscaping business, that plumbing business, that's going to help you stay on point with a guy like yourself. Like, you need to automate these things and schedule these things so you don't double book. So if appointments are missed, you have clients lined up, and you can continually sell your services to the next prospective client and check your cross tracking, get gasoline at the right locations. That's at a fuel station that may be cheaper and things like that. Thinking outside of the box, so to speak.
Yeah, no, it's all about those incremental things that you can do that don't get in the way of business that save you time and money.
Oh my
Right.
God.
So it's not building systems that are more cumbersome.
Right.
It's alleviating that pressure to
Right.
be able to go out and do things. I mean, I'm working with that running company you mentioned, Relentless Running Company. And like, that's been fun because it is building those systems now. Right.
Absolutely.
So it's on the flip side where it's a new business.
Right.
And I'm like, all right, what can I build? Right. What can I come in and put together and optimize some of the things we're doing? And I'll tell you, like with those guys, I've gone through iterations where I'm like project management, right? Like I went out and started using Jira or, something. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and so then I'm like, oh, Slack's got project management now. Let me put it in
Right.
Slack.
Yeah.
And like, really the goal was just to get it out of text messages. We're like, I'm like, guys, I can't stop searching my text. Like we need something. And we found a system now, and it's not perfect, but as we grow, then we can start to implement some of the other stuff.
Yeah, because if you're texting me, it's not business serious, right? Like that's like, I'm not saying like it may be, or it's not based upon the project. It may be like, dude, like there's a party tonight, or like let's get wings at XYZ restaurant. But if it's inside of Slack, that it's a different kind of conversation that's being had. And to your
Correct.
point, we need to transition to this platform because otherwise it may get lost in that bottom tier of text messages of whatever it could be. It has different attention in a different zone, so to speak.
100%, right? And like, and the texts have been great for that company because like we do have that, kind of the BS sessions and all those things. But some of our best brainstorming comes out of those, right?
Absolutely.
Of like, hey, look, I just saw this thing. Oh shoot, like, hey, I've seen this similar thing. All right, okay, how can we build this? And then it becomes all right, let's put it on the calendar. Let's have an intentional conversation about it. Let's get notes. All right, now there's a Slack channel that's specific to this thing. So time and place for all of it, but it's but it's been fun to like try these different, I use Monday.com in one company. Guys, let's try it. All right. I spent a day doing this. Nobody's touched it. Cool. Let's move on to something else. And like finding what works for the company and then watching it grow. Like,
do you find that working with startups and smaller companies they're more nimble, more receptive, more ability to make decisions quicker than if you've had a larger client or even, because you work with startups and other smaller companies, is there an advantage to them listening better because there's not as many layers that they have to go through to talk for approval?
Really interesting question. I think, to be honest, it depends on the founder.
Okay.
Some founders are like, yeah, come in, let's go, let's do this. I'll tell you, there was another gentleman brought me in and, as an example, like their onboarding process. I was like, hey, you don't have anything documented. You're going to these clients. You're trying to bring them on. Once they get on, they need something physically, right? Even if they don't look at it, it shows you're a serious company, and it shows that like if something goes awry, you can point back to it and say, hey, in the onboarding document X, Y, and Z. Right. And he was like, hey, I have all that. I'll get it to you, and you can put it together. I never got it. Oh, and that's just one example. Like the guy he had all this institutional knowledge, great person, great vision, like amazing vision. He wouldn't let go of anything. And so it didn't matter. And I would have the conversation and be like, I love it. Yeah. We should do that. And I'd be like, cool. He's like, I've got all that. I'll send it to you. And he never would. Couldn't get anything out of the guy. Couldn't. So it's the founders that are like open to that stuff and are willing to let go a little bit. And I get it's hard, right? Like I 100%, that is your baby. Like that individual has literally been working on this idea, this company for 30 years, right? Like literally it's been this maturation, and finally the technology is where you can launch this thing. He just couldn't let go of things. So I understand, but it's also, it's like, I've looked at it, my wife and I have had this conversation, right? Where we've got kids, friends that have kids that are a little bit older, and they're like going off, you know, to the movies without an adult. You know, my wife's
let it go.
My wife's like, never going to happen. Kids never going to be able to do. We'll sit in the back of the theater. We'll do this. We'll do that. It's never going to happen. And I'm like, okay, you say that, but like when they were a baby, we never left the room.
Right.
And that was like, you know, the thought of me putting the baby down and walking to the kitchen, you're like, don't you ever do that. Never. Never going to happen. You will never leave my baby alone.
Yes.
And now I'm frustrated when the kid won't go to the bathroom by herself.
100%.
You know, I'm like, get away from me. Go.
100%.
So, and it's the same with the startup, right? You've got this founder, that's their baby. And, you know, they're not going to.
All they know, man.
They're not going to let someone just come in the room and watch the baby.
Right. And even if it's
they have to for the baby to grow up.
Well, more, and here's the thing too, is that, you know, if you are, for every one person that can, and obviously there's that shooting star up there that can do it all themselves and then, you know, make it to be to the stratosphere. Most people aren't that person, right? So at some point there's going to have to be, this is the better path to take. This is an expansion plan. This is your financial, because usually what happens when you do something, and this is irrespective of business, but just, you know, whether it's working out, you're usually really good at something or really bad at something. Like if you played sports, you usually have a really good right or left hand, and your left or right hand sucks, right?
Yeah.
That's usually how this works. And you usually don't work on your left hand or your right hand if it sucks, right? Until you play against or have an opponent that can take away that left or right hand, right? And then you're like, damn, you know, I should have been working on my left or right hand for quite some time. So if you're, when you're growing or you're doing your business, like if you have a restaurant, and if you're, you know, serving the same dishes and you're serving the same clientele base, there's a restaurant that opens down the street that suddenly has alcohol, hypothetically, right? And you never sold alcohol, and they could have comparable food, and then all the customers go, whoop, because they wanted a happy hour. And you're standing there like, dang, all I had to do was get a liquor license. I've been selling, you know, why doesn't Bob come here anymore? Well, dude, I wanted a beer and I never had beer. It's just like, I didn't know that, it didn't even dawn on me that you could want a glass of wine, you know, eating at this restaurant. And to your point, if you didn't innovate.
I've seen it a lot with tech startups where you get the CTO, who's the brilliant engineer, they're the coder, they're whatever. You get the CEO, they're that visionary. They're the ones, they had the idea, they just didn't know how to do it, right? Or they're the salesperson, right? And so these guys team up, and literally everything is back to the napkin, institutional knowledge. Nothing is documented. There's no process. It's just, you know, the wild, wild west. And they need that person to come in and bring things. You know, I've literally sat in meetings. Like I distinctly remember one, I'm like at dinner with these two co-founders, and they're just going. And the conversation is awesome. You know, we've got the 12-month, the 3-year, the 5-year plan, And I finally just stopped them. And I'm like, all right, guys, shut the F up. Like, give me my laptop. Like, unless this gets documented, this doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean crap. Nothing. Like, it's awesome. It's great. I'm energized, but it has to get documented. And then there has to be a plan behind, you know, there has to be action behind these plans.
For sure. Right. Because otherwise it just becomes hyperbole. And it's a challenge to everybody, because that's not the fun part. Right.
Exactly. Of course.
The fun part is sitting there bouncing ideas back and forth and you're right. Sitting down and taking, you know, the time out to actually like map things out is very difficult, right? Because then it's almost like Amazon, right? Shipping the packages is really cool. The return process sucks. Right? The returns, like, you know, it's really cool to go, you know, when it's a Black Friday and you're buying everything, right? And you're willing to camp outside, but then when you have to return something and you're like you're trying to find that small window of maybe like 6 o'clock on a Saturday that like maybe like the traffic is a little bit lighter. Right.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, I don't know. You drive past the parking lot because you're like, oh, no.
Mine's on the way to school pickup where I'm like, all right, run real quick to UPS. No one's there. I'll drop it off. Like, it's not far out of my way. I can justify it. And by the way, my favorite coffee shop is right next door. So I'll
100%.
Right? But it is a very intentional thing. It's interesting you say that because I've said this before, and it's just, I guess I'm just built different. Where like love developing the process. Like I think it's such a cool challenge for me to be like, okay, give me a problem. let me develop a process and a system.
Yeah.
Let's see if it's sustainable or repeatable. It works for your team, because I could build the same process across 5 different companies and it'll only work at one. And then I love just setting it off in the wild and being like, does it work?
Yeah.
Does it? It's probably like somebody who codes, where like, to me, that's not fun, right? Like, and I've tried to learn some.
It's terrible.
It's horrible.
It's
But
terrible.
the moment they get execute, that feeling of like, did it work? And I feel that way with process building, where I'm like, here's the process, I pitch it, everybody's in, and then we set it off in the wild, and I just sit there like, all right, did it work?
Yeah.
Did it work? And I see it, and I'm like, yes. Or we email the competitor's CEO, and I'm like, oh, the process doesn't work. All right, let me iterate. Right.
The funny part is the funny part is he might have poached you, but like, dude, you know what? That's that you pulled a ballsy move right here. Like, why don't you come over here, dude? Real talk,
I know, right?
You know.
Yeah. So, but that's what's fun for me in the business world, is like, I built a process. Does it work? Did it give you time back? Did it make you money? Did it make something more efficient? Like, I love doing that stuff.
I think there's a certain fearlessness in this too, because, a lot of times people can get caught up in, starting this podcast, right? It was the hard thing, right? Because the starting was actually the hardest part, right? Because you're like, I pride myself on not being a subject matter expert in a particular field, because let's be honest, I can't do what you do, right? I can't build, I can't cook, I can't repair anything to save my life, right? So there's a laundry list of things that I just don't do well. Right.
Yep.
But the one thing that I did do well was I always researched, read, and just knew random factoids. And I pride myself being a decent listener. I'll never say I'm great, but I know how to navigate. I watch documentaries, I read. I'm a avid listener to what's going on historically wise. So being able to talk to somebody like yourself, even though I'm not a consultant, these things are very fascinating to me. Right.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, whether you're shipping mouse traps or whether you're, building homes, you better have a process of where's it going to fail? Where's it going to break? Who's the market that it's going to sell to? When are we going to have a competitor in that respective region? And what's the growth strategy? And that's where you come in, because people who are working on stuff literally they can get caught up in just the day to day.
Yeah, no, it's so easy to be head down. And I think that was one of the cool things about my military experience, is you're constantly deploying. You're constantly, like, at least for me, like the 20 years I was in, we were at war. Like, I think it's the only time in our nation's history that, like, you've got service members that went to full retirement, that we've known nothing but war. There wasn't a peacetime military. So you're constantly deploying. And it was always, especially when I worked with the teams, it was this joke that, like, the guy that came before you was a complete idiot. So it's your job to go fix what they were doing. And whoever's coming after you is just going to screw up all the great work that you've done. Right? That was like the camaraderie we had.
It was always pursuit of excellence.
It was a competition, right? Oh, you got 50 bad guys this deployment, I'm going to get 100. Oh, you were able to drop on, three predator drops, we're going to get 6. And it was this constant, how can I one up? How can I make sure that my team did better than yours in a friendly way, right? Like, it's the rising tide lifts all boats. And so I wasn't talking shit about that guy. Being like, you were terrible. It was, you were terrible.
This is the standard, right?
But only compared to me, because that's the only reason you were terrible.
Well, it's like the equivalent of like NFL, like Drake May is on the Patriots. Like, it doesn't matter what you did before. That's the guy that won 6 Super Bowls here, right? So, like, before, there's nothing else to talk about here. Right?
Exactly.
You can be the best player from your state. You can be All-American. You can say, man, your combine was great. And then they're like, they go, you walk in there and you look there's the trophy cases, dude. And unless you get a quarter of that, we're not having a conversation. Like, it's just a trade. So that's just the standard that's been set.
Exactly.
So if people can't get on board with that, there's nothing else to talk about, right?
Yeah, and that's what was fun there, doing those things. But you got really good at, like, coming in, and a lot of times we look at things through 3 lenses: is what do we need to stop doing? So what's going on that we should stop? What do we need to keep going? What's going well that we don't want to get in the way of? And then what should we start doing that we're not currently doing? And so you would come in, but it was this constant pursuit of, like,
one-upmanship.
You did your best to keep the status quo.
Yeah.
But also elevate everything, right? So, like, it was a tricky thing, because you only had 6 months, right? Yeah. So you've got 6 months to come in, have an impact, get spun up quickly, and then make sure the next team is set up for success as well. Because you didn't want those phone calls, right? You come home, you get 2 weeks off, right? Like, you were at home, and you don't want someone calling you at home and being like, hey, where's this radio? And like, next thing you know, now you're going into the office because you got to call on a security, you got to do all these things. It's making sure there's that continuous improvement and process building. And that's what has been cool about being a consultant is it is like these deployments, right? Like, I drop in, hey, I'm going to work with you for 3 months. How much good can we do?
Absolutely.
What can we do? And then how can I set you up so it doesn't all fall apart when I leave? Because I don't want the institutional knowledge. I don't want you calling in a month and being like, hey, the system you built is broke. Like, I want it to work and to set you up for success. So having that military experience of going in and out of deployments was great, because I very much feel that way as a consultant. Going in, here's my deployment. How do I optimize, make things better, and set you up for success?
I have to ask this last question. Did you ever unfortunately come in and see if somebody was being less than forthcoming with like financials or fraud or anything like that, and you were the guy that came outside in, and even if it wasn't intentional or unintentional, had to deliver that bad news, like, this has been going on, inside of your company, so to speak?
Yeah, I've been fortunate that I haven't necessarily run into it. I have run into like just some like, hey, your team is telling you something, and like they say they're at an 80% solution, they're probably at a 20% solution.
Right. Man. Yeah. More like efficiency or inefficiency, so to speak.
Correct. But then it's also a cool opportunity for me to sit down, because I do have leadership training. I do have it. So like I can sit down with that CEO and I'm not just there to build a process. I can be a partner and be like, all right, man, this is how your team is perceiving you, whether they're telling you or not, based on what I'm seeing. They're not being forthcoming with you. So there's a problem here, right? Like, there is a communication error. There's something going on.
Wonderful.
And so being able to have those kind of leadership conversations as well, whether it's my military background, my sports coaching background, things like that, like having that chance to be like, all right, man, this is what's going on. And this is how we can optimize some of your leadership and your communication stuff, as well as the process stuff. Because at the end of the day, too, you can build a process. The CEO can say, do it. But if the team doesn't trust the CEO, the process isn't going to work either, because everyone's going to be like, well, this guy's an idiot, and this is obviously going to fail. So it's a trickle-down effect. And I don't like to go in and fix a problem without getting to know the team first as well.
Of course.
Like, I'm not going to show up week 1 and say, this is what you need to do. Like, I'm going to get to know the team to optimize that process. And in the process of doing that, then you come across some of these things where it's like, all right, man, like, it's not embezzlement. Like, no one's going to jail. But like, they don't like you very much, and they're not being honest. So
for sure, right. So thank goodness you haven't encountered that. That wasn't like one of those like moo ha ha moment. I hope that happened. It was more like because you hear about stories like that where like all of a sudden like they bring in the outside auditor, consultant, whoever, and they're like, this is not as what they thought it was. Well, I had probably bugged you long enough.
No,
and so
this is great.
I always ask every guest this: where can people find Shaun Bemis?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Substack. So my LinkedIn is just Shaun Bemis all together. Substack, the left foot. I'm trying to revive that. So I'm not a podcast guy, but I do fancy myself a writer. So those are the 2 places. If you're a runner, on Strava, I'm ultramarathoner and spend a decent amount of time on Strava. So.
You'll have to catch me when you're at the finish line, bro, because I'll be passing on drinks now. You're catching me jogging that long.
All good.
Oof. Yeah, that ain't happening. But I work out, but marathons is not my thing.
No, this is my midlife crisis, as my wife has said. It's a new one for me.
Well, I got to thank you, man. Like I said, I appreciate your time. You're a busy guy. This has been an honor. And again, thank you for your service. Shaun Bemis on the T.R.O.N podcast.
Yeah, appreciate it. This was great.
Awesome, brother. Thank you.
All right, thanks.